Hello and good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Simon's IMAX Theater at the New England Aquarium. I'm Gina Parente. I coordinate the lectures here. We always like to give a shout out to our supporters, the Lowell Institute, that allows us to offer these fantastic programs free and open to all of you each week throughout our season, throughout the year. We do about 22 lectures or so per year, so we hope that you will join them. Most of them, if not all of them, of course. If you can't make a lecture for whatever reason, we do film most of them. WGBH Forum Network films some of them, but tonight we are joined by Wesley Sanchez from Emerson College, and we're very excited to have him back. He may be a familiar face for some of you that have come to a lot of the lectures, so he's here tonight, and we'll have the video available on the aquarium's YouTube page shortly after the lecture. So it is my great pleasure to now hand over the Master of Ceremonies to my colleague Bill Murphy, Senior Aquarist, who will be introducing our speaker for this evening.
Is it any taller? Can you guys hear me all right? So thank you very much for coming tonight. Sai is a dear friend of mine, and I've known her for several years now. Due to her work here at the aquarium. She got introduced to Octopus because saw a crazy story, and she'll tell you all about it much better than I can. But she started coming to the aquarium and many, many years ago, and it's been history ever since, and it's been great working with her over the years. Let me just give you a little background on Sai, just a couple things about her. She is 100% committed to her research. She loves animals, loves what they do, and loves studying and gets right in there. She's been chased by silverbacks, she's been bitten by vampire bats, she's been chased by tigers. I mean, you've been doing a lot of chased lately. You've been attacked a lot. But she's been all for the work, for her love of the animals and her research and the books to get in there and learn and do everything she can to know as much as possible. Just like any of us that really care about animals, she's 100% dedicated to it. She's written over 20 books for adults and children. Probably her best work, if not this book, my personal favorite, has been The Good Pig, which is a story based on a pig that her personal friend, her pig at home, Christopher Hogwood, excellent name. She's been the winner of a presidential award for lifetime achievement in the New England Independent Booksellers Association, the American Association for Advancement of Science Books and Film Prize. Outstanding work. It's just been a pleasure working with you, and I'm not going to waste any more time, so it's a great pleasure to introduce my dear friend, Simon Montgomery.
Thank you so much, Bill. I'm about to show you some beautiful and amazing photographs. I could probably read the phone book and show you these pictures and you would be happy. But I want to thank the two photographers. With few exceptions, these images were created by Tia Strombeck and Keith Ellenbogen. And this lecture, like the book, is dedicated to Anna McGill-Dohan. So, I'd like to start by telling you about someone who I met in March of 2011. Maybe you knew her too. Her name was Athena. If she stood up, she would have been about 4 feet tall, but she only weighed about 40 pounds. And she had a beak like a parrot, and venom like a snake, and ink like an old-fashioned pen, and she could pour her baggy, boneless body through an opening the size of an orange. Because she was, of course, a giant Pacific octopus. When I first met her here at the aquarium, one of her keepers opened the top of her tank and she turned bright red and flowed over to meet me. Her eyes swiveled in her socket and met mine. I plunged my arms into the 47-degree water and her arms came boiling up to meet mine. She latched onto the skin of my arms with her creamy white suckers and began tasting me. And she could taste with all of her skin, including her eyelids. But this sense is most exquisitely developed in the suckers. So I had the unique pleasure of being touched and tasted by dozens and dozens of these suckers at once. Later, I realized that not everyone would like this, although perhaps many of you would. But I was elated. Now, if a person had started tasting me so early in our relationship, that would have been different. And it was a bit odd. I mean, it was cold and it was slimy. And then I also realized I was going to have all these hickeys to explain to my husband when I got home. But the reason that I was so elated was that it was very clear to me that Athena wasn't afraid, so I wasn't either. And how did I know? Because she turned white beneath my touch. And white is the color of a relaxed octopus. Well, I was delighted too, because not only was she not afraid, but I had the distinct impression that she was just as curious about me as I was about her, which is amazing when you consider that humans and octopuses last shared a common ancestor about 500 million years ago. She was a marine invertebrate, I a terrestrial vertebrate, and yet across a chasm of 500 million years, we were having, I felt, a meeting of the minds. Now, this is something that makes a lot of scientists and philosophers nervous. When you talk about animals having minds, many people feel like, oh, that's something that just belongs to people. Only recently have scientists accorded even chimpanzees, with whom we share 99% of our genetic material, with whom you can have a blood transfusion, the dignity of a mind. But what about someone like Athena? Someone with no bones at all, somebody who can pour herself into a tiny crack, someone who can taste with all her skin. Can they have a mind? Well, that's something I wanted to explore. Many people have said that octopuses are extremely intelligent. This was one of the few things I knew about octopuses. I did not even know that the plural was not octopi, because you can't put a Latin ending on a Greek word anymore, so it's actually octopuses. But I had heard that they were very smart. And this is wild because they're mollusks. And who else is a mollusk? Well, snails are mollusks. Clams are mollusks. And clams don't even have brains. How could I feel that I was meeting somebody's mind? Well, this was the start of an adventure that has lasted to this day. And Bill is never going to get rid of me, it seems, because I just learned that the aquarium is going to have a redesign of its octopus tank. And they've asked me to be part of the team that's going to do that. So I am absolutely thrilled. So tonight I want to share with you a little of my octopus odyssey. Here at the New England Aquarium, I got to know 4 octopuses fairly well enough that I could clearly see that they recognized me. They would come over to greet me. They would often turn color with emotion, and they usually embraced me with their suckers. And at the same time, I got to know some extraordinary people who would also embrace me with their suckers. No, they were really great folks, and many of these people would show me truths that in a lot of circles might be considered heretical. I met people who could see fishes dream. I met people who could tame anacondas, and people who could train blind toads. These folks were doing the impossible. And making these friendships with both the vertebrate and invertebrate friends were revelations to me that changed my life forever. One thing that they did for me, they opened the sea for me. I called myself a naturalist for half a century, and yet I wasn't scuba certified until I was inspired to do so by meeting these octopuses and these wonderful people. But most of all, knowing these people and knowing these octopuses changed my way of thinking about thinking. And this is what my book is about. But first, I'd like to go over just a few facts about octopuses. You may know these, but they're just great things to drop at a dinner party if you want to get rid of the person who's sitting next to you. There's over 250 kinds of octopus, from little tiny ones. There's also ones with Dumbo ears that live at great depths. There's new kinds of octopuses actually being discovered quite recently in Brazil. Some octopuses actually live communally, the lesser Pacific striped octopus. Most of them live alone, though, which makes it all the more amazing that you can be friends with an animal as solitary. But the kind that we all know best, the octopus, the ultra octopus, the kind that is the plum in the plum pudding that is our aquarium, is the giant Pacific, the largest one. And there are records that exist for giant Pacific octopuses that grew to 300 pounds with arm spans of 32 feet. You would have to search science fiction to come up with a stranger being than an octopus. Let's look at what some of these creatures actually look like and how they're put together. They have faces in places you wouldn't expect. Their mouth is in their armpits. Their bodies don't go like our bodies. Let's take a look at this Pacific day octopus and go over the parts. You know, we go head, body, arms. Most people don't realize that, that this part that looks like the head, which I can't even see, but the thing that looks like the head isn't the head at all. That's the mantle or the body. The head is the part with the eyes. And again, their mouth containing their beak is in their armpits, and then here go their arms. The giant Pacific octopus, like all octopuses, also has venom. In fact, there's two kinds of venom that the giant Pacific has. It's a pretty mild venom, but one is neurotoxic and the other will eat through your flesh. So you really don't want to be bitten by one, but they can choose to inject venom or not. And better to be bitten by a giant Pacific than somebody like this Australian blue-ringed octopus whose bite is deadly. Octopuses have blue blood because the oxygen-carrying component in their blood is not iron like ours, but it's copper. They have 3 hearts. They're capable of shocking strength. A single big sucker on an adult male giant Pacific, which can be 3 inches across, can lift 30 pounds of weight. And remember, the giant Pacific has 1,600 of them. One expert calculated that to break the hold of a much smaller octopus, Octopus vulgaris, this sounds like it swears at you, but it doesn't, it just means it's the common octopus, would require a 1/4 ton of force, and that's a much smaller octopus than the one that we have here. Octopuses can regrow severed limbs, and a limb that is severed can go off and do stuff, often for many minutes. And I have read, although I've certainly not seen this, that it can go hunting and catch stuff, but unfortunately can't eat it because the mouth is somewhere else, which is too bad. And of course, an octopus, as we know, can change both color and shape. So, when you seek to enter into a relationship with somebody like this, you realize you're dealing with someone who not only has an alien's superpowers, but someone who's very smart and someone who is an individual. They are highly individual creatures, and this is reflected in the names that keepers give them. In the Seattle Aquarium, for example, they had one octopus they named Emily Dickinson because she was so shy she never came out. Then another one was named Lucretia McEvil because she dismantled her tank all the time. And then there was Leisure Suit Larry, and I'm sure you can imagine what he did. One arm would be on you, you'd peel that off. 2 arms would be on you, you'd peel those off. You could never get away from it. And Athena, I learned, had also earned her name because Bill Murphy, who runs the Cold Marine Gallery, named her after the Greek goddess of wisdom and warfare. So she was smart and she was strong. She was a feisty octopus. She was not at all like her calm, laid-back predecessor, George. And she was also unlike the octopus who was to follow her, Octavia, who I would meet all too soon. What usually happens, octopuses live fast and die young. A big animal like a giant Pacific octopus you would wish would live for a long time, but they only live between 3 and maybe 5 years tops. So what Bill usually does is, so that there's always an octopus for the people to see when they come to the aquarium, he usually has a young octopus behind the scenes who's growing up and getting to know people, and when the old octopus dies, the new one is used to folks and happy to go on display and be a social friendly octopus. But Athena died suddenly, and he had to quickly get a large octopus, and you get them from the wild. These octopuses, giant Pacifics, are not raised in captivity. Only once has there ever been a giant Pacific octopus raised in captivity from an egg. Only once. And these octopuses lay 100,000 eggs. So getting a captive octopus was not an option. He got one from the wild. He needed a pretty big one because you want a big octopus. So when Octavia arrived, she had already spent quite a bit of time in the wild. She'd had a lot of time to grow up in the wild, and she was a real expert at camouflage. Now, octopuses put chameleons to shame. Watch what this one did in less than a second. Started out like this, did that. They can also grow spots and stripes. Some can be iridescent. This is a Pacific day octopus, but Octavia was fantastic at changing color and better at this than any other octopus than even Wilson Menashe, who has worked here for 20 years, had ever seen. Now, their ability to change color is something that they learn. They have 3 different kinds of color-changing cells in 3 different layers of their skin. Some are responsible for iridescence, some are responsible for the pinks, greens, and blues, others have little sacs of brown, black, and yellow pigment. They're all controlled by nerves and muscles, most of which are under the octopus's voluntary control. And to camouflage, the eye alone uses 5 million of these little sacs of color called chromatophores. So all the octopuses that have ever lived in the aquarium can change color, but Octavia was exceptionally good at this. And she was also exceptionally wary because she had lived in the wild for so long. That's how you survive if you're an unprotected packet of tasty protein. A mollusk without a shell is asking to be somebody's lunch in the wild. So this is why octopuses can change color and change shape. This is why they can shoot ink and how they can pour themselves into a tiny opening. This is what you have to do to escape your predators. And it demands that you have a very quick and agile and sharp mind. Well, I was very eager to meet Octavia when Bill invited me to shake hands ×8 with her when she arrived. But at first she wanted absolutely nothing to do with me and not much to do with anyone particularly. The first time we met, she wouldn't even touch me. I tried all morning without success to greet her, came back, and Scott Dowd, who introduced me to Athena, was with me, and he held out a tasty squid, a fellow cephalopod, for her to eat, trying to entice her over to see us with these long tongs. Nothing happened, nothing happened, nothing. And then she grabbed the tongs. Not the squid. Grabbed the tongs. And the next thing I knew, she grabbed me and started to pull. And at one point, Scott said he thought he was going to be holding onto my ankles. she was a very strong animal. Now, an octopus can resist a pull 100 times her own weight, and I weigh about 123 pounds. Now, 100 times her own weight would have been 4,000 pounds. If she had wanted to pull me in, she could have. But she wasn't trying to attack me. I wasn't under attack. I was under investigation, and I wasn't nervous at all. Her curiosity had been piqued, and I was delighted. Now, that octopuses are curious is extremely clear from the fact that they love to manipulate objects. They famously enjoy toys. In fact, there's an octopus enrichment manual so that aquarium folks can do something to keep their octopus from getting bored. Because if your octopus is bored, you're in for a hard time. They will escape their tank, usually into somebody else's tank, who they then eat. They will destroy all the objects in their tank. Or they'll hide from you and give you a heart attack, making you think your octopus has escaped. So it's important to keep your octopus occupied. Some of the things that the enrichment manual recommends you do is give your octopus some of the toys you might give your children, like Legos. They love to play with Legos. They love to play with Mr. Potato Head. But for our octopus, we happen to have, as a volunteer, an engineer with many patents to his name who worked for the Arthur D. Little Corporation. And this was the person tasked with the important job of coming up with something to interest the octopus. And Wilson Menashe created a series of plexiglass boxes. The first box had a lock, and inside it, he put a crab. At first, the octopus would say, "Oh, great, there's a crab in this box. I'll just put my arm in and eat it." Next, they'd lock the box, and quickly, the octopus would figure out just how to unlock that. But then Wilson created 2 more boxes. He'd lock the crab in one box and lock that box in yet another box. And then a third box. And that box had 2 different locks, different from the locks on the other 2 boxes. And the octopuses would invariably learn how to open them. But here's the really cool thing. The octopuses all had individual different ways of handling this. And like people, they had moods. So Guinevere, his first octopus, was impetuous, and one day she was just in a big hurry to get her crab, and she did not feel like unlocking the box, even though she knew how to do it. So she crushed it. She crushed it, and she left a big crack in the box. Well, then another octopus came to live with Bill, and that was Truman. And Truman knew how to unlock the boxes too, but one day he got a special treat, and the treat was 2 crabs. Well, the crabs started to fight, and Truman got so excited that he didn't bother to unlock the locks. Instead, he slid through the crack that Guinevere had made. And this is what happened. It's an octopus in a box. So we were very interested to see if Octavia was going to be playful. Would she enjoy these boxes? Was she going to like us? Could we even get her to come over and meet us? Well, the next time I came in, after she grabbed me, I came with friends. A radio crew from Living on Earth, the environmental radio show, had read an article I'd written in Orion Nature Quarterly, and they wanted to do a segment on octopus intelligence. But I was real nervous because I didn't know that Octavia was going to want to come over and greet us at all. But it was a big breakthrough. She totally wanted to meet us. She was happy to meet us. She grabbed out of Wilson's hand a delicious capelin and was eating this. And then with the radio crew there, people were starting to pet her head, and they were starting to feel her suckers. And we were all just thrilled to be petting this octopus. We were drowning in sensation, as you can imagine, because she's turning color, and we're feeling her beautiful skin, which is like custard, soft as custard. And we're watching her, and there were 6 of us actually watching. So 12 eyes watching this octopus. 3 of us were touching the octopus. And then we looked around, and Wilson wanted to feed her another fish. And what had happened to the bucket? Well, she'd stolen the bucket right out from under us, and none of us had seen it. And I think she thought this was hilarious. And what's funny, too, is that although the bucket had lots of fish in it, she wasn't eating the fish. She was playing with that bucket. And I think she was laughing at us. I think she enjoyed playing a trick on us. I kind of wondered if she'd consent to be friends with people who were this dumb. But she did. And she became a lovely, friendly animal. Now, some of you may wonder, like, did she really recognize you? Well, yes, octopuses definitely recognize individual people, and this is not my observation, it's not Bill's observation. It has been scientifically proven by experiments that were conducted by Roland Anderson and Jennifer Mather at the Seattle Aquarium. What they did was they got volunteers identically dressed, some of whom would always feed an octopus a delicious squid or fish, and others would touch the octopus with a bristly stick, which they don't like. Very quickly, even though the volunteers were identically dressed, and even though the octopuses were only looking up through the water at the people, not touching or tasting them, they learned to move toward those individuals who had fed them and move away from those who had touched them with a bristly stick. And sometimes they didn't just move away. Sometimes they blasted them with salt water. And here you see an octopus who is flaunting their jet. Can you see the jet on the side of the eye? They can shoot with amazing accuracy and hit you right in the face. But they don't just use their jets to repel things they don't like. They also use their jets to play. And this was something Roland Anderson had written about in a scientific paper that he prepared on octopuses he saw playing with little pill bottles that he gave to them as toys. And they weren't just manipulating them and holding them in their suckers. There were two different octopuses that were using their jet to send the little pill bottle into the jet of water that was coming out of their filter. So that, like bouncing a ball, they'd shoot the pill bottle away and it would come bouncing back to them. And then they'd shoot it away and it would come. The octopus, the first one that he observed, did this 20 times. It's exactly like bouncing a ball. And octopuses are very sensitive to what we're thinking and feeling too. And I got to witness this a number of times. One of the times I want to share with you was when Krista, one of our volunteers, brought her brother, Danny, to meet an octopus behind the scenes, who was named Kali. So Danny loved octopus, was very interested in octopus, even has a dead octopus in the freezer that he takes out and looks at frequently. He'd read all the encyclopedia entries about octopus. He knew a lot of facts, but he'd also seen those scary movies in which octopuses are attacking a building and pulling down a bridge. And so for his birthday, his surprise was going to be to actually touch a real octopus. And faced with this, he was a little bit nervous. And he was actually shaking just a little bit. And Colleen knew that. Every time he would touch her, she would kind of latch on, but then feel that he was hesitant, and then let go. And finally, she figured out what would be a great icebreaker, and that was to blast him in the face with salt water. And instantly after that, Danny lost all his fear, and then he was all over Kali. And he drew a wonderful picture of that occasion, which I keep on my desk. It's something he would never forget. Well, back to Octavia. She came to recognize us, all of us, particularly Bill, her favorite, but also Wilson and me. And she not only recognized us, but she sought our company. She would see us and come over for a visit. And she would, right here, she's lying on her back, essentially saying, hey, I'd like a fish and I'd like you to put it right there. She's showing you her armpits, where her mouth is, and where her beak would be. And long after we stopped feeding her, though, she still wanted to interact because it was fun and she enjoyed it. So what's it like to interact with a marine invertebrate like this? To have someone like this know you and enjoy your company? Well, I'm going to read to you a little bit from the book about my experiences with 3 different octopuses. This first one was one of my first experiences with Athena. Once Athena finishes eating her fish, she plays gently with Wilson's hands and forearms. Occasionally, the tendril-like tip of an arm curls slowly up to his elbows, but almost lazily. Mostly, her arms twist weightlessly in the water, her suckers gently kissing his skin. With me, her suckers felt insistent, exploratory. But with Wilson, she's completely relaxed. As I look at the man and the octopus touching each other, they remind me of a happy older couple, many years into a loving marriage, tenderly holding hands. And here's a little scene from Octavia. I'd been away. Actually, I think this was when we went to Seattle, to the Octopus Symposium. So I'd been away for a bit and hadn't seen her. When I saw Octavia again, she held on to me gently but firmly for an hour and 15 minutes. I stroked her arms, her webbing, her head, absorbed in her presence. She seemed equally attentive to me, wrapping her arms around mine. Clearly, each of us wanted the other's company, just as human friends are excited to reunite with each other. With each touch and taste, we seemed to reiterate, almost like a mantra, it's you, it's you, it's you. And finally, a little scene from Kali, one of the young octopuses that we got, who lived behind the scenes almost her entire life, and who was a very special little creature. Kali is curious about her company. And what's more endearing than someone showing interest in you? She explores Brendan and his girlfriend with the tip of her second left arm, while she investigates the 2 educators by folding a sucker around their fingertips. She flips upside down, unfurling the creamy suckers on her arms like a blooming flower. Her skin models. She creates horns and thorns. She pulls her head up and lets me pet it again, now going white beneath my touch. Her eye rolls. She's looking for Wilson. She finds his face, and 2 of her arms rise up and envelop his arm like 2 slices of bread around a sandwich bun. So these relationships are all the more amazing when you consider how very different an octopus brain is from a human brain. The human brain, you know what that looks like. It's got 4 lobes. It sits like a walnut in its shell. Each of the 4 lobes has a different function. But an octopus, depending on the species and how you count those lobes, has between 50 and 75 different lobes. And unlike our brain sitting inside its walnut shell, the octopus has no skull, and its brain wraps around its throat. An octopus has fewer neurons in its brain than we do. We have an awful lot. We have 100 billion neurons. A rat, for comparison, and a rat is a very smart animal, has 200 million neurons in its brain. An octopus has more. It has 300 million neurons in its brain. But there's more, because most of its neurons aren't even in its brain. 3/5 of an octopus's neurons are in its arms. So it's as if each arm almost has a mind of its own, which is handy if you're multitasking, changing color, searching around for something to eat, watching for predators, shooting out ink, jetting away. It helps when your arms can do their own thing. And our life cycles are very different. Now, most intelligent creatures that we think of as being smart like us are, like us, long-lived and social. Humans, chimps, whales come to mind. But an octopus usually lives its whole life alone. And they live fast and die young. They only live for 3 to 5 years, the longest lived species that we know, the giant Pacific. And unlike us, we have our babies in our youth. They have their eggs at the end of their lives. And there's a steamy sex scene in the book, another reason for you to buy it. I actually got to go back to Seattle. I spent Valentine's Day one year watching 2 octopuses have sex. My husband was fine with that. It's really a glorious affair when you see it, unless one eats the other, particularly bad if it's in front of all the school children who bust in to watch this event. The sex that I got to see was particularly erotic and lovely and successful. And in Seattle, after the octopuses mate on the octopus blind date on February 14, they release the animals into the sound so they can lay their fertile eggs. But that was not an option for us. And it was an exciting day when Octavia laid eggs. But they were infertile because she hadn't had a chance to be with a male. But it still was lovely. Bill said it was like completion for her to be able to go through this part of the life cycle. But it was bittersweet because we knew this is one of the last things that octopuses do. And here is Octavia on her eggs. See the eggs hanging there from the side. Each is the size of a grain of rice. There are about 100,000 of them. And in the wild, a mother octopus will wait in her den, guarding those eggs from anyone who might eat them. She will not go hunting, and she will not eat. She devotes the rest of her life to aerating, to fluffing, to cleaning, and protecting her eggs. And even though these eggs were not infertile, this, too, was Octavia's ultimate and final task. So from the moment she started laying eggs, which she did at night, no one ever saw, she would weave them into chains. We never saw her do that. But from the moment she started laying eggs, she wanted nothing to do with us. She had something more important to do. Now, Bill and Wilson would sometimes try to get her to eat, and she would accept, occasionally, fish from the end of a grabber. But there was no interaction. She did not taste our skin. She did not look at us from the moment she laid those eggs. Now, in the wild, depending on water temperature, a giant Pacific octopus might stay on her eggs for 6 months, or maybe 8. It's wonderful devotion to do this. So month after month, we watched Octavia taking care of these eggs. 6 months, 7 months, 8 months, then 9 months. Then 10 months she had been on these eggs. And she was behaving as if they were fertile, but they weren't. It was heartbreaking in a way to see her growing thin and old, but still devoted to her eggs. And then one day, Octavia developed an eye infection, the same way that older people get all kinds of infections just because their immune system isn't as strong. And in Octavia's own best interests, and also because we had a young octopus behind the scenes who needed a larger tank, it was decided to move Octavia to a place where there were no sharp anything, that she could hurt herself, she could be monitored. But this was going to pose a big problem for Bill, because Bill had never moved an adult giant Pacific octopus out of a big tank before. How do you do that? Well, one of Bill's excellent volunteers, Darshan Patel, happily was there to help. and he tried to urge Octavia into a bucket so she could be moved. But Octavia wouldn't go. And even though she was elderly, she was still strong. Those suckers weren't going to let go of the top of the ceiling of her lair. And Darshan struggled with this for a while Bill waited on the top, getting ready to transfer the octopus. But the most amazing thing happened. After she poured herself into a crevice and wouldn't let herself be pulled out, what happened was, and I'll read you from the book, Bill bent his 6'5" frame in half, so that although he couldn't see her tucked up under the rocks, he could feel Octavia's suckers. With his fingers, he gently urged her into his waiting net. To Darshan's astonishment, the minute she touched Bill's hand, Octavia entered the net on the first try. She had not tasted Bill's skin for 10 months. All that time, because she was under the ceiling of her lair, she couldn't even see it was him handing her food on the grabber. And yet, Octavia's response to Bill's touch showed two remarkable aspects of her relationship with her keeper. She not only remembered him, but she trusted him too. Now, some people will say, well, isn't this anthropomorphism? Isn't this attributing human characteristics to an animal? Well, I say those characteristics didn't belong to humans first. And when somebody says to me, well, that's just anthropomorphism, I have the perfect phrase that I can give to you which will stop anyone dead in their tracks. And I got this from Jennifer Mather, the octopus psychologist, who we both met out in Seattle and who had done those personality tests with octopus. She was the one that established the fact that octopuses do recognize individuals. And what she says in response to that charge of anthropomorphism is neurotransmitters are highly conserved across taxa. That should shut anyone up. And what that means, though, is that the brain chemicals, the hormones, the blood changes that mark our innermost feelings, our emotions, these are shared across lots of different animals. To the extent that leeches and mussels being attacked show the exact same rise in immunocytes in the blood and later the same release of natural opiates as a person who's having bypass surgery. When a scallop is approached by a predator, its little heart beats faster, just like yours or mine were if we were approached by a mugger. Octopuses have a version of our cuddle hormone. Has anyone heard of oxytocin? It's known as the cuddle hormone that helps you bond with your children and bond with your mate. Well, they have a version of this so like oxytocin, it's called cephalotocin. And a prominent group of neuroscientists put their understanding of this in writing not long ago in the Cambridge Declaration of Consciousness in 2012. And they said humans are not unique in possessing what it takes to generate consciousness. All mammals and birds, they said, have the neurological substrates necessary for consciousness, and many other animals do too. And they specifically mentioned octopus. Well, when we heard that Octavia had been moved, Wilson and I came in to see her for one of the last times we thought, essentially to say goodbye, because we knew she was at the end of her life. And I wondered, would she recognize me? Would she know me? And what happened was that even though she hadn't seen us in 10 months, hadn't tasted us or touched us in 10 months, the minute we opened the top of that barrel, she came floating up to greet us. And she greeted us with her suckers. She looked us in the eye. And it was an effort for her to come to that tank, come to the top of the tank. And she held on to us and kissed us with her suckers and let us pet her, even though she was very old and she was tired and she was sick. We stayed at the surface together for at least 5 minutes, and she died just a few weeks later. That to me showed she not only recognized us, not only remembered us all the time, but wanted to touch us again. I don't know exactly what I meant to any of the octopuses that I met here. I don't know what their multitasking arms felt about me. Maybe some of the arms liked me and some didn't. I don't know what consciousness feels like for an octopus, but I know what they gave to me. And it's something I'll never forget, and it's a great gift. And it was the gift of a far deeper understanding of what it means to think and to feel and to know. Thank you. Thank you to people who helped me with the book. These are folks who either work here or volunteer here. I'm so grateful to what you gave me. Thank you.
So I think we can take some questions now.
Yeah. Let's see. I'm going to put on my glasses so I can see. Are there any questions? Yes.
So why are they solitary, do you think? Or no? Are they just not good
Well,
around each other?
they just have it. They just have a different lifestyle. But what's so interesting is that there's 250 different species of these guys, and they have discovered a species that they think lives communally. And another question that solitariness brings up too is, what's their intelligence for, and why do they want to be friends with us if they don't even want to be friends with other octopuses? One reason that they might be solitary is that they're constantly on the lookout for something delicious to eat, and they do sometimes cannibalize their mates. I read about one octopus pair that were going at it, making love 10, 11, 12, 13 was unlucky, she ate him. But, why would they want to be friends with us? That's kind of amazing to me. Why are they smart? Well, the reason I think that they're smart, and this is not my original idea, this is something Jennifer Mather has brought up, is that when they lost that ancestral shell, they had to get smart in order to eat all these different prey items and avoid all these different predators. And this has made them very sensitive, I think, to what others are doing. They have to be able to predict what their prey or their predator might be doing. So I think they're pretty good at imagining other minds. And maybe they are imagining our minds, and maybe that's what makes them such good friends. That's my guess. Yes. No.
Can you repeat the question?
I'm sorry. Have they eaten human beings? There are cases in which octopuses have drowned human beings, but usually that's when the person is hunting them and you get an octopus on your face and you can't get the octopus off. So, don't put an octopus on your face. Believe it or not, people do this. In fact, when I started learning to scuba dive, my dive instructor at the United Divers told me that one day, to impress some friends, he took an octopus and this wasn't a giant Pacific octopus, it was one of the small, probably Pacific Day octopuses, and put it on his head. And the octopus took a dim view of this and put an arm down his throat. And he thought, well, this isn't very good. So he bit the arm off, which was all right because the octopus was happy with that. You could just regrow another one. But then you have the problem of someone's arm is down your throat. But he was able to get that out of there. But you would not believe, a number of people think it would be really funny to put an octopus inside your dive mask to freak out your girlfriend. So don't do this. The octopus won't like it at all. Octopuses, they can kill you also with their venom, particularly that Australian one that we were talking about. Yes. boy. Well, I'm an author, and I've always been interested in the natural world, and I've done 20 books on animals, and I'll go anywhere, do anything to be with the animals. And I actually was hoping I could do a book on this when I showed up with an assignment for Orion magazine. And I was just really lucky that a lot of people like Octopus and liked the magazine article. So, you know, I'm just a writer, I'm just an author. I don't even have an advanced degree. I have some honorary degrees, but I don't have any, like, real ones, except for an undergraduate degree. And that was just in French and journalism and psychology. So I'm just a regular old person that no one has eaten yet. That's my big claim to fame. Yes, sir. No, they live only if they're lucky to use that beautiful siphon, that funnel, to usher their babies as they hatch out of their eggs, out of the den, in a scene that, to me, recalls that one from Charlotte's Web, when her little spiderlings are ballooning away. But of course, Charlotte didn't live to see her babies. There was an octopus named Olive who lived in Seattle, and divers got to know her while she was brooding her eggs. And they actually filmed her babies hatching. And you can see this on YouTube. And just a few days later, they found her body being scavenged by a sea star. But she did get to see her babies hatch. But there's no maternal care. The babies are planktonic. And this is one reason why there's only been one baby giant Pacific octopus raised from an egg, because we don't really know what they're doing as plankton drifting around in the sea, giving life to the earth. It's pretty mysterious. Thank you. Oh, there's still questions. And you know, Doris, Big D. I'm so glad you're here. This is my dive instructor. This is the reason I did not drown in Mexico when I saw my first wild octopuses. So,
my question is, what are their predators?
What are the predators of octopus? Well, when you're little, anyone will eat you. Anyone will eat plankton. When you're big, if you're a big giant Pacific octopus, a moray eel might try to eat you. A shark would try to eat you. People will eat you. So, but when they get really big, they can put up a pretty good fight. And in fact, at Seattle Aquarium, they were worried. They were having their octopus be in a tank with some sharks, not like giant great white sharks or anything, but you know, like black-tip reef sharks or something like that, and pretty small sharks. But they were afraid that their octopus might get nipped, so they were watching very carefully. Well, the octopus was just fine, but the sharks started turning up dead. And they found out that the octopus was not eating them. The octopus was killing them preemptively, just so they wouldn't be a nuisance. So they can take care of themselves pretty well. I'm so glad you're here. Oh, yeah, the penguin lady. This is fabulous. Any penguin questions?
I'm curious, what is your role going to be in helping to develop the new exhibit for the octopus?
Oh, boy. Well, I just found out about this. This is about the new exhibit for octopus. I just found out about this. So I just think it's really exciting. I guess I hope I come up with something useful to contribute is what it is. But I can't wait to see this. What's going to happen is that we're going to always be able to have two octopus here. And Bill isn't going to have that problem of having an octopus behind the scene in a barrel, getting bigger and growing up and then worrying. And it also means that if you get a behind-the-scenes tour, you'll always get to meet an octopus. So that's going to be really great. And the tanks for these animals are going to be bigger than before, which is terrific. And so we'll be finding out the details as they're developed. Cool. Yes.
Have you ever sat
What's that? Are they ever sad in captivity? I am sure that you could be sad in captivity if you were bored. You know, if your octopus is bored, they could be really sad. I think, you know, here at New England Aquarium, Bill and all the volunteers are very careful to make sure that they have enough stimulation, they have stuff to do that interests them. And, you know, they also realize that not every octopus enjoys every toy, and that certain toys some octopuses will like and others won't. Some octopuses are shy and others are bold, so you have to cater to them being individuals. But I think it's really important that people are even asking the great question that you asked, that people are even considering the happiness of an octopus. And this is the reason that I titled the book, The Soul of an Octopus, because people often don't want to accord souls to other beings or emotions or thoughts, but they have them. And I feel much more at home on this earth knowing that I'm not the only species that has these glorious depths of feelings, and that there may be depths of feelings out there that we as humans can't experience. I mean, we know that there are colors that we can't see, for example, that birds can. And what would it be like to taste with your skin? You know, there's worlds of sensation that we can't know. So I think it's great that we're starting to accord some of the stuff that we definitely share with other creatures, that we're allowing them to have those minds and caring about whether they're sad or not. Okay. 2 more questions. And do you want to pick them?
No, you can't.
No? Are there 2 more questions? Yes. Oh, how do they get into those little cracks? Well, they have no bones. They can pour themselves like water. They can just collapse themselves like water. As long as their beak can get in there, they can go in there. And another thing that helps, it helps to be covered with slime. Slime is good. So that helps you to like grease your way in when you have to. But it's really amazing to watch them do this. And sometimes it's quite an effort. You know, they're kind of pushing themselves in there, but they'll do it. One more question? Oh, yes. Why don't they live that long? You know, I asked God that question. I wish they lived longer. But, you know, I guess, like they say, they live fast and die young. They pack a lot of living, a lot of sensation, a lot of learning, a lot of life into a very short period. And who knows, maybe it feels like a long time to them. You know, maybe they feel like a person who's lived to be 100 when at age 3 or 5, you know, the mother octopus finally gets to see her children hatch, and then she dies. So thank you all so much. I'm delighted to sign this. And the main characters in the book will also sign the book for you if you want, and they'll be sitting out there at the table, happy to inscribe that.
Thank you all so much. Thank you for coming. Sai is going to be out signing books, so if you have any questions for her or stories you wanted to tell her, head right on out to the front and line up right at the tables. There's a few white tables out there, and she'll meet you back there. Thank you.